Boys! The new chapter of Deltarune graced us with some of the most powerful weapons in the game, so today, I'm gonna be ranking them from worst to best for the end of chapter 4. If you want a tier list for consumable items, so let me know in the comments below, and if you want one for armor or a guide on how to get these, well, I already did that, so check the description after this video. I won't be counting unused weapons or weapons set to be used in a later chapter, no matter how much I want to, but for the ones I will be ranking, they'll be ranked based on how good they are in all routes, which may be a little hard, but stay with me, and how useful, not necessarily strong, they are. So, let's get started with the bottom of the barrel, number 28, the Broken Sword. I mean, does this one even count? You can't even equip this one, can you? I mean, if we do fix it, it might give a lot of attack, but this list is about chapter 3 and 4, so unfortunately... Now, for the next couple of placements, we have the default weapons of the cast. Unless they have some special interaction I'm not privy to, let me know in the comments below. They're just gonna go one after another, since they all give nothing. Wait, Chris's one gives one attack? Why? Okay, Susie's main axe is in number 26, since you can't re-equip it after equipping it, even though it's forged from the mane of a dragon. Really puts what Gerson said into perspective. Noelle's ring can go in 25th, as I personally do not describe to...
Mr. Fox, you've got to tell me if Rousey is my brother.
Rousey's Dainty Scarf in 24th because it's the least worst. And Chris's Wood Blade in 23 because of the single point and attack it gives. Seriously though, why does it do this? For number 22, we have the Flex Scarf. No, Viperine! What are you doing? Chapter 3 weapons so far down? Yes! This shit would be in last place if it wasn't for the default weapons and the literal unusable one. 4 defense and 1 attack in chapter 3. 4 attack and 1 magic in chapter 3. Do you realize how useless this is? If you're doing No Mercy, you already have the Puppet Scarf or the Ragga 2. If you're doing Pacifist and you're using this 1 magic item, you're dumb as fuck. Hate to say it. But Viperine, it's a good middle ground for No Mercy. And the only weapon for Rousey that doesn't fuck up his healing. No buts! No buts! That's stupid. Who would think that? You guys wouldn't think that. You know what? Hit that to subscribe. Anyway, sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, if you want an option for Rousey to heal while in No Mercy route, then just use the Dainty Scarf. It's only 1 attack lower, but gives 2 magic, and doesn't cost shit. Bro, just use the Ragga 2, man. If you need a heal, use your items, or learn to attack like a real man. Or genderless child. Next on the list is the Brave Axe. Susie's 2-attack weapon from chapter 1. The reason it's 21 and the other 2's attack weapons are higher is because immediately after obtaining it, it becomes obsolete by the Devil Knife, which gives over double the attack and an increase to magic, and on top of that, decreases the cost of Rude Buster. The best thing about this weapon is that it makes getting the Devil's Knife easier, unless you're not using the Devil's Knife. Number 20 is Chris's Spooky Sword. Their 2-attack weapon from chapter 1 and also their only weapon from chapter 1. Unlike the others who get 2 from this chapter, Chris only gets 1 as the other one, the Trefold, ended up being unused. Which is a shame. 5% money up would be greatly appreciated for a chapter 1 weapon. But anyway, it's fine. More useful than Susie's weapon, and you get it much earlier on. Number 19 is the Ragga. Rousey's 2-attack weapon from chapter 1. It's the highest of the 3 since it's last to get paracrapped, and that's it. Honestly, it's fine for what it's used for. Solid weapon for No Mercy in chapter 1. Can't wait for Ragga 3. Moving on, number 18 is Susie's Auto Axe. Our first weapon from chapter 2, and our worst. Damn. What is it with Susie and getting the worst weapons, bro? Anyway, there's no point in using it in Pacifist unless you're trying to get the Puppet Scarf for some godforsaken reason. Or there's some queen fight math I'm missing. Not that one, this one. I don't know, there's no point into using it in Pacifist unless you're trying to get the Puppet Scarf. Why would you try and get the Puppet Scarf in Pacifist? And yes, I know losing is the viable option for that fight, but that's for pussies, bro. We run that shit the whole way and then let the cutscene take us out, bro. That's how our men know it! I suppose if you want to attack the Queen's Barrier instead of toasting it, but like, it's not worth it for me. Also, what's a couple more turns in a really easy boss battle? And also, for me specifically, I know I'm being really paranoid, but I'm afraid of doing anything that would ruin a possible Pacifist or No Mercy ending in chapters 6 or 7. So later on, when we get to the Puppet Scarf and Devil's Knife, I'll get into it a bit more. So for me, Auto Axe is only useful for No Mercy routes, which is kind of useless if you already have the Devil's Knife. Now for chapter 17, getting chapter 17 would be a blessing. For number 17, we have the Ragatoo. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this weapon. 5 attack is the highest you're gonna get for Rouse outside of the Puppet Scarf, which itself is a bright and downside. Like, getting the Dealmaker in a No Mercy route is honestly valid, outside of the possible No Mercy ending implications, but then you're missing out on a whole 5 attack for Rouse. And for what? More defense? Yeah, that's valid. For magic? For who? Rouse? Healing magic? Healing? Okay. I was gonna say healing Rouse is infinitely worse in No Mercy routes, but honestly, also valid. Healing Rouse is pretty honestly valid in No Mercy routes since they end up being the worst attacker, unfortunately. So you know what? Dealmaker just seems like a good option. Ragatoo should probably be brought up higher, but the script's already been made. But for Susie, the Dealmaker isn't that good as Rude Buster doesn't work how you think it does. The equation for Rude Buster is 11 times the attack of Susie and 5 times the magic. So maxing out the attack is much more valuable for that than the Dealmaker. So for me, at the time of writing this video, Ragatoo has no place as I'll be using the Puppet Scarf instead. But for someone who wants the Dealmaker for the defense specifically, then the next best option is Ragatoo. Well, I don't know, I still want to use, I would still rather use the Puppet Scarf because I'm afraid that sparing Spamton in a No Mercy run will ruin the ending, as I will get into many times throughout this video. But yeah, should probably be put higher, but for me personally, number 17. Number 16 is the Mecha Saber for Chris. I put this one above the other chapter 2 No Mercy weapons, since Rouse's one gets power crept later in this chapter, Susie's one gets power crept in the previous chapter, and Chris's one gets power crept in the next chapter. So yeah, for being the chapter 2 weapon which stays relevant the longest, and the one that will be used in the Snowgrave Spamton fight, which don't need to tell you how hard that one is, it gets number 16. Number 15 is the Freeze Ring. This one was a very strange weapon to rank. Editing Harry here, you could probably swap this and the Ragatoo, if I'm being honest. It's a very solid weapon for a character that only shows up in one chapter, and his only purpose is to either abort or activate the Snowgrave routes in No Mercy routes. However, it's a very solid weapon regardless, and lets Noel essentially one-shot any enemy, so I had to put it at least this high. Number 14 is the Toxic Axe, another weapon for chapter 3, and again, suffering the same problems as the Auto Axe, despite being a whole point above the Devil's Knife in attack. That isn't enough to overset the advantages you would lose from picking the Toxic Axe as your chapter 3 weapon over the Devil's Knife. At number 13 we have the Saber 10, above the other two as it takes the longest to be power crept. Not much to say here, in No Mercy routes you'll be using it until you get the Black Shard. Now, surprisingly low at number 12 is the Devil's Knife. I was so heartbroken when I figured out this weapon wasn't all that in No Mercy routes, but once you get to chapter 4, this weapon ain't all that, man. The 2 magic it gives does help with the Rude Buster, but the 8 attack from the Absorb Axe helps much more. Honestly, this weapon is better in Pacifist, as you use it in chapters 3 and onwards, since healing Susie becomes slightly better, but not enough for you to actually use it. Yeah, but in one of my comments for the last video, I got told about how if you farm with Susie's healing in chapter 3 and 4, it becomes much better. Not better than Rouse healing, but setting up for something good in chapters 5 and 6. However, for now, it's not enough for it to actually matter yet, so basically it comes down to whether or not you're afraid of fucking it up in a future No Mercy run. In No Mercy routes, it's good until chapter 4, and in Pacifist runs, it'll probably be good in the next chapters. By all means, if you're certain Sparing Jevil won't change the No Mercy ending, then go ahead and use this in No Mercy routes. Go ahead and use this in Pacifist routes. I don't know if that would drastically increase its ranking, but if you're not paranoid, then it would be higher than it's ranked for you. Next weapon for Rouse is the Scarf Mark from chapter 4, despite being nearly exactly the same as the Flex Scarf, which this shit would be in last place if it wasn't for the default weapons and the literal unusable one. But it does have 1 defense, a stat unique to this weapon as none of Rouse's weapons give any defense. It does gain flexibility points for this, being a solid option in No Mercy routes and Pacifist. However, in Pacifist, if I'm going to be honest, we care much more about magic. It is only 1 magic lower luckily, but personally, if I'm a Pacifist, I'd rather a reliable healer, and Rouse isn't going to be needing the defense in Pacifist, since they will be having the Dealmaker 90% of the time, which has 5 defense, so it's not really a problem. However, I wouldn't judge you for picking the 1 defense over the 1 magic. So, number 11 for the Scarf Mark. Number 10 is the Puppet Scarf. Honestly, depending on what you think about the endings, you could swap this and the Devil's Knife around, but for me, I use this exclusively in No Mercy Roots for full power Rousey, and I was so disappointed by this weapon. In Chapter 2, I was hyped as fuck. Rousey became the strongest attacker. Wow, that's so unique, that's so cool. Healer turned into the brute strength for the team. That's awesome. How cool. Yeah, cool for a whole 2 important fights. After the Queen fight and the Board 1 fights, Rousey immediately gets caught up to by Susie with a fucking Toxic Axe. But that's fine, right? We've got the Devil's Knife. We'll be one of those people who use the Devil's Knife instead of the Auto Axe, yeah? So we still have it for the Night Fights. But you know what the #1 strategy for the Night Fight is? Defend with Chris, defend with Rousey, Shadow Mantle on Susie, Rude Buster, Rude Buster, Rude Buster, Rude Buster. We need all of our attack on Susie, which means Rousey gets power crept. He is no longer the strongest attacker, and the Puppet Scarf just becomes obsolete immediately after this fight because Chris now has the Black Shard. From pure Soul, I switched Rousey from a pure attacking build to pure healing in my No Mercy run since he's just so outmatched by Suzy and Chris in terms of attack and so far away from what I wanted him to be. They better buff the Puppet Scarf in the next chapter, yeah? Like, the Shadow Mantle increases in attack for every chapter. They changed how the Twin Ribbon works from chapters 3 and 4. So like, surely we buff the Puppet Scarf, right? I need my Rousey. In all seriousness though, allowing Rousey to catch up to the other two in terms of attack can't put us any lower than 10. It's honestly valid to skip the Scarf and get the Dealmaker. But if you want everyone in your team to have solid attack, then this is the weapon for you. Number 9 is the Absorb Axe. Another pretty weird one to rank. It's good in both routes, especially when doing the Gerson fight. But after that, it's power crept in No Mercy routes by the Justice Axe, and it's still used in pacifist routes. Not because we want to, but because of its vaguely pacifist ability to gain HP from attacking, which we don't really want to be doing. And no, we don't use the Justice Axe in pacifist, because Susie increases her healing by fighting Gerson, not by equipping the axe. So I don't know, there's literally no other good axe for her in pacifist, except maybe the Devil's Knife, but I already talked about that. So number 9 for Absorb Axe, or if you're gonna use the Devil's Knife in pacifist routes, then swap the Absorb Axe with that. Anyway, speaking of the Justice Axe, that is what's next, as unlike the Toxic Axe, the 12 attack it offers more than makes up for the lost abilities of the Devil's Knife in No Mercy routes. It's crazy to think that both Jevil drops were power crept in their respective routes. Now you gotta like cross-contaminate. I don't do the cross-contaminating shit, bro. I'm afraid. If you haven't figured it out already, I'm afraid of fucking up the pacifist routes. Anyway, number 7 is the Dainty Scarf. I love the Dainty Scarf. All my homies love the Dainty Scarf. Man, fucking hell yeah for the Dainty Scarf. Let's go. Drop a like and a comment and subscribe if you like the Dainty Scarf too. 2 magic from the Dainty Scarf makes it tied for the highest magic stat weapon for Rousey, which is a little concerning, I'm gonna be honest. But for me, I personally like this one more than the Fiber Scarf, as I'm worried that I'll attack an enemy and, again, end up ruining the pacifist ending. But regardless, it's tied for the best magic weapon for a healer, so of course it had to be pretty high. In all seriousness, number 6, the Fiber Scarf is probably the best option for Rousey in Pacifist, in case you come across some fight where you have to attack, like the Knight or the Titan. But honestly, if it comes down to an attack-focused fight, you could probably just swap it out for a weapon with more attack, like the Ragged 2, right? Not the Flex Scarf! So you could just switch the Fiber Scarf and Dainty Scarf around based on which you think is more valuable, getting further on your first attempt, or saving possible pacifist endings. For me, I would swap Dainty Scarf to 6 because I love it, but we had to have one sensible ranking where I'm not stuck by paranoia, so Fiber Scarf for number 6. The next 2 will be the Jingle Blade and the Bounce Blade, basically the same for Chris, 2 weapons with the same stats, being the 1 defense. Neither of these would be used in No Mercy routes because of the existence of... So again, whichever you value more depends on how afraid you are of a possible true pacifist route. Then there's the Wingblade. Surely that you mean Wingblade, yeah? Not strong enough to be used in No Mercy routes, but is the only weapon that grants any sort of money up effect, making it tied for the best possible pacifist weapon for Chris. Honestly, the past 6 weapons can be mixed around on this list to your preference, like you could put the Dainty Scarf all the way at number 3. That's what I'm gonna do. Finally, in second, the long-awaited Black Shard. The strongest weapon in the game with an insane 16 attack. See Puppet Scarf? That's a stat that won't get power crept. There's no reason not to equip this in No Mercy routes, unless you want money. But if you want to be the strongest, this weapon is a must. Not to mention it's the Knight's weapon. Like, how cool is that? But you may be thinking, what is stronger than the Black Shard? 16 attack is the highest attack item you'll get, right? Well, what if I told you there was a weapon stronger than that? A weapon that could beat not only any enemy, but fate itself. That's right. This weapon breaks off from the prophecy and onto our own path, creating its own roots, the only weapon that allows us to kill our opponents and create our own destiny, the Thorn Ring. Now throughout this ranking, I've ranked weapons lower than I probably should have because of fear from ruining the endings, Devil's Knife in Pacifist, and anything I said was power crept by the Devil's Knife in No Mercy. So imagine a weapon that can create its own ending. Not only to mention, it's the highest stat gain weapon by a country mile. The attack gain may only be 14. Well, only, despite it being the second highest attack gain. But it also gives an insane 12 attack. How is that okay, bro? Imagine Rousey or Susie with this item. They'd be insane. How much fucking Rude Buster damage would Susie do? For all this, I've decided to give the Thorn Ring the highest spot on this list, despite it only being used for one fight. However, it may come back in another route thanks to the Twisted Sword, but this list isn't even considering that, and I would still consider it the strongest weapon in Deltarune. Now guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and let me know if you want a consumable item list in the comments below.